I was thumbing through some Latin America stuff recently, and it came across, well, I call it one stamp or two stamps that really jumped out at me. I found them quite interesting, and somehow I had overlooked the whole history of these things in the past. I don't really specialize at all in Latin America, but if you have the patience, there are some fascinating things there. One reason being that, like some of the European countries that interest me, Italy, Germany, for instance, in the philatelic era, these Latin American countries were coming together. They were malleable. They were of different sizes and shapes, and they kept changing borders and having disputes and so on. And indeed, they kept changing their name, which is interesting, and that appears on some of the stamps. The United States stamps will always say United States postage, but the Latin American stamps really do vary. And this is one that just caught my eye. This is what many believe is the first commemorative postage stamp issued in the Western Hemisphere. It is obviously from Peru, and it was issued in conjunction with some railroad anniversary. Different authorities will differ as to whether or not this is really a commemorative stamp or if it's favor printing of some kind. I'm not qualified to get into that, but it is a battle between Peru and Argentina for the first commemorative issue in the Western Hemisphere. In the United States, Columbians, which were the US's first commemorative, they were issued in conjunction with the Chicago exhibition of
Right.
1893, the
Right.
Columbian exhibition.
hmm
I'm not sure what Canadians say was the first Canadian commemorative.
I think it was the Christmas one, wasn't it?
That's the only one I can think of quickly.
Yeah, that's the only one I
Yeah,
can think of, with the map and the red and blue.
And what was the year on that?
yeah,
1890 something.
Yeah, it was like 96 or something. It wasn't
yeah.
so far back.
These are the stamps. I prefer to use the word "the stamp" in this case that I'm talking about. It's of course from Argentina. It is in two denominations, and yet they're almost exactly the same color, which I think is an unwise decision for a stamp issuing agency to come to. Nonetheless, there you have it, dos centavos and cinco centavos. Uh, what I like about the stamp, and particularly I focus on the 5 cent one to the left, it's beautifully engraved, really, really well done. And I think it would be better known as a really premier engraved stamp, especially of that era, if it had been made in a larger format. This one is halfway between the size of a regular United States issue, say the Bureau issues of the 1890s, and a commemorative. It's about halfway, but they used obviously the same design for both printings.
And those would be the ships of
I guess I
Columbus,
can't.
I assume.
That is Columbus's fleet,
Yeah.
and there's a couple of things about that I'm going to talk about. This is why the stamp really intrigues me. I guess my interest in stamps altogether is closely allied to my interest in history, more than in printing techniques, printing errors, rarities, and so on. This is the United States version of pretty much the same scene. There's the fleet together. I think the Argentine stamp is, in one way, historically speaking, more faithful. It shows the relative sizes of the Santa Maria, the Nina, and the Pinta more correctly, I think. That, of course, is the Santa Maria, the large ship in the foreground. The other two are considerably smaller. Of course, they're at a distance, it's true. Interesting enough, I believe it's the Scott catalog refers to the stamp as showing two ships. Well, there's one in the background there too, right on the horizon.
Yeah, indeed.
I think it's the Scott catalog that does that, but it hardly matters. It's the stamp that matters, of course. Here's the United States version of that. And with this, it does look as though at least two of the ships are the same size. In fact, the Santa Maria was, well, I can't give dimensions of it. If you've seen the ship, the Mayflower in Plymouth, Massachusetts, or if you've seen the Mary Rose in England, or some of these, the ships at the time were not very big. It's amazing how many people were crammed into these vessels. It's simply amazing. You had absolutely no privacy, and probably couldn't get a good night's sleep with the tossing and turning and whatever else was going on with the ship's business.
Another thing about ship size, I think a limiting factor might have been the access to what kind of trees and lumber certain countries had, because certain structural elements, I would imagine, would need to be one continuous piece of lumber without a joint in order for it to be structurally right. So the height of the tree would matter.
Absolutely.
You know, like
Absolutely
if you need a
true.
mast to be one piece of lumber and not have any joins in it.
British North America, they actually sent people out into the forests to mark trees that were forbidden to be touched by locals. They were reserved for His Majesty's Navy, and you would be executed if you chopped down an oak that they had designated for their military purposes. Historically, one of the great problems with building vessels that would go to the high seas was how to make them big enough to be truly useful for cargo, say, or of course for war, without going up too high. Because if these things get top heavy, they topple over very, very easily.
Yeah.
And a fair amount of the discoveries that are made of ships underwater are from these days, from the 1500s, are ships that were knocked over by a sudden gust of wind. I've read years ago, I'm very cloudy on this. One reason the Portuguese became such terrific explorers earlier than almost anyone else was they had mastered the art of building the ships high enough, but still keeping them not top heavy, so that they could, of course, mankind being what it is, so they could load cannon and then be superior in any battle to any other ship of any kind. So it was among those reasons that the Portuguese were able to scoot down the coast of Africa around Cape of Good Hope and so on and so forth before anyone else. I guess Magellan, well, at least his fleet circumnavigated the globe. He didn't make it all the way. I think he died in the Philippines. It's been a long time since I thought about this. But in any case, I think the American Columbian issues are beautiful. They are cherished by stamp collectors, of course. But historically speaking, I go back just one more time. I think this is a more realistic picture of the relationship between the ships. And the detailing in the engraving, particularly on the left, is marvelous. That's a darn nice stamp. These are ships that are obviously have a common mission. They're sailing in the same direction. These are ships that are at rest in a harbor or something. They're going every different way. You know, I mean, some are heading west, some are heading east, and some are just sitting. There's also something else about the stamp that is interested me. Think of Alfred Hitchcock. I'll go back.
There's birds.
The birds. Bravo.
Oh, yes. In the
Thank you,
distance.
Jennifer. The birds, what's important about that is if you read accounts of Columbus's eventual discovery of the island of Hispaniola, was the sailors realized that they were approaching land when they first spotted large flocks of birds. There are seabirds, but they are solitary for the most part. If you're going to have a flock of birds, it means they're based on land someplace. And when the sailors saw the birds, they rejoiced. At least they were going to pull into some piece of land, however hostile it might turn out to be. So I love this little detail in the stamp. Bravo. And I cannot talk about ships on stamps without referring to Blue Nose, particularly since we have so many Canadian representatives here. Yes, it's a beautiful stamp. All right, get over it. And finally, talking about this stamp, Argentina honored Columbus again in 1929. When they issued the stamp in 1892, it was the 400th anniversary of the discovery by Europeans of the Western world. That's the way we do things, 100th anniversary, 50th, so on and so forth.
1929, what's the significance of that date?
The significance of it is that it has absolutely no significance. It's the 437th anniversary of the discovery of America. But it was time for Argentina to issue a stamp. Argentina issued very few stamps. This is the one stamp is missing from the set, but so it's a three stamp set. And that was the only stamp Argentina issued in the entire year of 1929, other than perhaps back of the book stuff I don't know about. So that's my little discussion on what I think is a darn nice stamp. I'm done.